Welcome to our viewers around the world. My name is Ophelia Dahl, and I am a co-founder of Partners in Health. For over 30 years, Partners in Health has not just asked the world to imagine health justice, but has proven what is possible with compassion, determination, and a relentless belief in equity. The fight for health justice is enmeshed in the fight for gender equity, racial equity, climate justice, and all other movements that aim to create a safe, equal, and inclusive world. This year, for World Day of Social Justice, Partners in Health has assembled a panel of powerful activists from different movements who care deeply about tipping the scales of justice towards equity. What a pleasure it is to be here, virtually with all of you and with our panelists. I'd like to introduce them. First, Marta Pozzan, who is an actor and a writer. Laetitia Ky is an artist and a writer. Jess Tillyer is the Chief Brand Officer at We Inc. And Ashley Renne Nsonwu is an environmental activist. Obviously, these women are so much more than any title can suggest, and that is why we are delving straight into the conversation. So let's begin. I'm going to ask all of you this first question. So welcome to you. And the first question is, everyone on this panel has had moments or a collection of experiences during which they first became aware of injustice. Can you share a little bit about those moments or those experiences for you and how that led you to become an advocate for social justice? And I'm going to begin with Laetitia.
Okay, so I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much. Personally, I can't find just one single moment where, I start to think about social justice as a mission, but I have countless experience of injustice since I'm a child. For example, when I was a child at school, every morning, all the girls of the class need to take a broom to clean the classroom while the boys are out there. Just the girl, we have to clean the classroom. Or it was very obvious the difference of treatment also in the household between the girls and the boys. When you grow up, and your body starts to change and you become a teenager, the harassment starts and it's very traumatizing. There were also, all those adult women, the housekeeper that were working in the houses, they don't know how to read, they don't know how to count, they cook, they clean, and you realize that they can't do all those things just because their parents think that we don't need to educate a girl or a woman just because they are born as a woman, they don't need education. There is so many experiences, but when you grow up in this type of society, you learn to normalize it because everyone tell you this is normal, it's okay, this is how, and you don't have to rebel yourself. It's just when I start to evolve in my journey of self-love that I realized that I have a value as a human being. And when you realize that you have a value as a human being, you don't let society treat you poorly anymore. And this is when you start to realize that you have to do something to make things change. At the beginning, I was just using my phone to share some experience with my Facebook friends. There were just a few to see that, but it was really helping me. It was like a therapy for me to just, okay, today I was harassed in the street. I take my phone, I open a little conversation. We're not allowed to talk, but it was really helping me to deal with it.
So interesting. Thank you for that. I'm going to move on to Jess. Same question. Jess, you're on mute.
If I think about some of my earliest and most important memories, it's actually in my father's art gallery. Both of my parents are artists and advocates for mental illness and people across the mental spectrum and disability. And so growing up, I was literally often under the table around mentally ill artists, people with differing mental and physical abilities. And those are truly my earliest childhood memories. When I was young, I also attended funerals for people that had committed suicide. And none of this was ever something that wasn't spoken about in my house, in my family. We were very, very open about the fact that there's a spectrum of everything, from gender to our brains to our bodies. And our role as human beings is to not just accept or tolerate that spectrum, but actually fight for and advocate for people across all of these different types of spectrums. And so I think that as a child, that's just what I believed. And then when I kind of got out of the nest and started being more and more my own person interacting in society, I started to realize that everything that my parents had taught me was not actually the way the world worked. And for the majority of people, especially other like white people like myself, that idea of being an advocate, fighting for people that were different than us, working towards a more equitable future, just was not relevant and wasn't even something that was in the sort of privileged mindset. And so I think it was those early experiences of just seeing the beauty of mental differences and physical differences and all different types of differences that really, and then seeing the ugliness of unacceptance is really what has directed my life to want to really fight for myself and others.
Thank you, Jess. Marta.
Okay, so there's been like many, many moments, but I remember vividly thinking when I first moved to the United States, I didn't think that I was different than anyone that was born here. But when I would go out or just, for dinner, just to meet people, they'd always be like, oh, I hear an accent. Where are you from? And I never thought that defined who I was. I was just Marta. I was just a girl doing her thing, but they made me feel like I was different. And the sound of my voice made them like identify me as like something other than what they were. And so I always thought that I would never want to make anyone feel different or like, not like them with any sort of like, for the way they look, the way they speak, the way they act. I feel like I've always, since a very young age, although I was born in Italy and grew up in Italy, which is a very, very small country compared to the USA, I just never felt like it was okay to point out things about people that weren't like, that didn't look like me or didn't feel like me. So I was very, very shocked. And then the whole, as an immigrant, I had to like get all my paperwork to be able to live and work in the States. And it wasn't really easy. And the fact that I had to fight so hard for that. And still, I was so lucky to be able to get my green card and get all that stuff sorted out. Made me feel so privileged because not that many people can do that. And it's not also that kind of like knowledge and that kind of information is not accessible to most people. So I wish there was a world and a space where, these kind of things were easier when people are trying to work in a different country. I really wish that it was like better, easier for most people. And with that also came along the feeling of like, oh, not only is she not from here, but she's also a woman, she's a girl. And I think so many times I felt like I didn't identify with the idea of what a woman should be like, what a girl should act or feel like. And I think that I wish that I was taught that from a younger, age, because I think we have to unlearn what we like, what we're taught as kids, that because you're born female, you're supposed to be certain things. And every time I can talk about it with people that ask me questions about it, I always find a way to like share my thoughts on it. And I think that openness and kind of like, you know, like lack of judgment is just like, are just so important for any kind of like conversation on these matters.
Resonates. It really resonates. And I see Laetitia nodding her head as well. And
yeah,
I mean, it's the exposure to what it is that all of you have experienced. Ashley, jump in.
Yeah, so for me, I can go all the way back to this one single moment. Prior to becoming an environmental activist, I was actually a travel creative. And for me, it was the more that I was traveling the world, the more my eyes began to open up to just how much it was being destroyed. But there was one particular trip that really showed me that things needed to change. It was a trip to Bali in 2015. And I just remember my jaw dropping wide open when I stepped onto a beach that was just covered in piles upon piles upon piles of litter. And what I noticed was that it wasn't tourists who were being impacted. It was the locals, because I had actually gone off the beaten path. I wasn't on my, comfortable, cozy resort beach. I just decided to go visit a local beach. And, it's the resort beaches that were being cleaned and maintained to ensure the, privileged tourists weren't being exposed to the pollution problem, while the actual residents were the ones who were being stuck, being an afterthought, which just goes to show that the intersectionality of environmental injustice and social justice is very real. And in this instance, I noticed how the impacts of environmental pollution are experienced differently based on how important society deems you are. And so the more I continued to travel, the more I just became so much more aware of how, interconnected environmental injustice is to the injustices that people and animals face on a daily basis. So eventually I actually just decided to completely abandon my glamorous career as a travel blogger to now follow this passion that I had developed for environmentalism and veganism. And so I pivoted into the direction that I cared most about, which was eco-conscious vegan living. And so now I create, content that educates my community about how to bridge individual action with systemic change to help, end animal exploitation, to help protect our natural environment, and to help improve the health of our own bodies through sustainable vegan lifestyle changes, especially in communities of color, which are disproportionately being impacted by climate change and health problems. I even started this relatable, entertaining series that I call The Green Tea, where I spill all the green tea on like sustainable and vegan topics. And so with this series, I use video to uncover all these unnecessary ways that brands and manufacturers sneak unethical, toxic, and animal ingredients into the products we consume so that we can make more informed choices about what we buy. And I feel that when we vote with our dollars by choosing better brands that care about the planet, that care about animals, and that care about our own health, that's how we can help change this broken system. So that's how I got into it. It really all just goes back to that one trip where I first noticed what the problem was, and then I changed my lifestyle to reflect what I had learned.
So for Ashley, it was one moment, one experience. For most of us, an accumulation of experiences or influences from how we grew up. So the next question I want to focus a little bit on social media and activism. And so before social media, activism of all kinds played a major role in changing the course of history. Today, the power and influence of social media in modern day activism can be tracked through a movement's following, likes, hashtags. Laetitia, I'm wondering, what's the role of social media in your activism work, and what are the real world effects of your activism online?
Oh, I think social media is such a powerful tool. I mean, it's just amazing Now with my career, I'm able to travel a little bit. But when I start being an activist, I never left my country, but yet my work and my words, my picture were able to reach people all over the world. And I will never be able to do that without social media. It's just amazing. With social media, you're able to educate yourself about a lot of different issues that don't happen in your country. For example, when on social media I talk about issues like female genital mutilation or breast flattening, some Western feminists say to me, "Oh, this is the first time I'm hearing about all those stuff," because it don't happen in the country. It just happened a lot in Africa, for example. So I think it's very important and very amazing, because when they learn about those type of cause or the type of issue, they become allies. They sometimes they even make donation. They really join the fight. And I love our social media really help to bring everyone together and to be to help other people fight for what they want to fight. This is just amazing. And of course, there is some drawbacks. I mean, with social media, everything is not positive. There is a lot of negative effects. For example, being an activist on social media can be very heavy on mental health. There is a lot of hate, because when you're an activist, sometimes you will share some unpopular opinion. And when you share unpopular opinion on social media, people can go crazy. You will receive insults, death threats. I mean, I've seen it all. I've seen it all. And sometimes it can be very heavy on your mental health. But when at the end of the day, you know why you are doing what you do, you stay focused and you just continue. For me, it's just an amazing tool, because it really allows us to reach people everywhere without even moving.
I think it's very interesting what you're saying. And I was wondering how you all balance this, the sort of on stream of both the likes, but what can come with that as well. It's a
Yeah.
Definitely understood as a heavy toll. Jess, so same question for you. What's the role of social media in your activism, and what are the real world effects of your activism online?
So for me, I think it might okay. So for me, my activism is cultivated through the brands that I work with. So with Re-Inc, which is a purpose-driven brand, truly eco-conscious, environmental, made in the US by women-owned factories. We also have a membership for change makers. Our brand is essentially a social impact platform that was founded by women from the US women's soccer team that were behind the equity battle for the pay gap. And I mean, our brand was really founded outside of social media, but social media helped us really create and find our community. And it's just been incredible to see the way in which our brand for so many people that we serve is so much more than a commerce relationship, but is really a place that they can find strength and safety and like-minded people. And it's actually interesting because we created this membership. So we have our own essentially social media platform now. And we created that because we were seeing such success with the people that were finding us on Instagram and on Facebook and wanting to go deeper with us, but wanting a more private platform, that we actually ended up creating our own platform for them, where we could really go deep into social activism and to tools that they could take back out into the world or back online. So it's been incredible. And, I really agree with the point that was just made about, there is also a dark side. And so I think information is so important. And there's such an importance of checking the information that you're sharing and just making sure that, it's it's correct and backed by science. And I think, the dark side can be that doesn't always happen. But overall, it's just been incredible for our brand.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that the positive, hopefully most of the time, far outweighs the negative. I can't help but think about, being an activist myself before these social media platforms, and how the timing felt so different. The urgency was there, and obviously there were people people before us who had even less technology. But it's interesting to grow up. The way in which we grow up and what we have access to kind of fine tunes us to what it is that we feel, or the ways we can be most effective. Thank you both for those answers. So the next question is really around the enormous plethora of issues that command our attention today. Healthcare, obviously, mental health, race equity, environment. So it can be hard, I think, for social justice newcomers or those who are curious to really know where to begin. They can feel overwhelmed. How do you hold space for those issues, and what advice do you have for budding activists? And I'm going to turn first to Ashley and then go to Marta.
Oh, yeah. I think the key for budding activists is to understand that good leaders don't just create more followers, they create more leaders. So if you want to make an impact, look for ways to educate and empower your audience with the knowledge that they need to go out and, take action. And don't discount, the power that you hold within your immediate, circle, your inner circle, your friends, your family, your local community, who can all support your ventures and initiatives and amplify the impact of your mission and your brand. And, know that you don't even need a big audience to make a difference. I'll give you an example. One day I decided to randomly do a pumpkin drive with a friend of mine named Cola from Black in the Garden. And we were trying to salvage all these pumpkins that get thrown away and end up in landfills over Halloween, and instead do something good with them, like turn them into compost. And a friend of mine saw a post that I did, and she ended up organizing her entire neighborhood to donate to our cause. And she ended up being the biggest donator of pumpkins to the local community garden that we were partnering with. And that was a friend of mine who, was my biggest supporter. And then let's just talk about entry points, right? So there's so many entry points to activism and to just making a difference in general. I started out as a blogger, and since then I've found so many different ways to make an impact in this industry outside of blogging. So, you could start with a blog or a vlog. You can, be an activist and join organizations, or even start your own. I joined Climate Power as a board member. You can develop your own sustainable products, if you want to be an environmental activist. If you see, a certain industry, a certain space where you see there's an opportunity to create something better, more sustainable, more eco-conscious, vegan, then start that product, create that product that you want, that you see a hole in it, fill that need. There's so many different ways. I actually have my own sustainable product line. It's an eco-conscious vegan product line that I'm working on and preparing to launch at the end of the year, because I saw an issue and I decided that I was the person to solve it. My sister and we partnered together to do this. So there's so many ways that you can enter the space of activism and make a difference on your own. But the key is just understanding your power as an individual, and knowing that, ultimately you can lead by example, and it'll create this domino effect that, it might not seem like you're making a big difference because you're just one person, but because of that domino effect with all these people who are watching you, including your friends and family, eventually collectively you end up impacting the entire world in some way or another.
I think that's so true and so pragmatic, that advice. I love the idea that good leaders create more leaders. I think that's just excellent. Marta.
For me, being an activist and working on talking about mental health, is very personal, because every time I get asked to do that, it always comes from my own personal experience. So I've been going to therapy since I was 17. I was struggling with panic attacks from a very young age. And I remember feeling so scared to ask for help. And as I started my journey, I realized that although in the beginning I wasn't ready to do so yet, I wanted to help other people, process what I was like working on. And I think that desire, that sort of mission to just tell them how I felt, how I figured it out, and what I did to, like make myself feel better, was just so simple, but so priceless. And it all started by just like simply listening to friends, or like letting people, even like sometimes I feel like I'll randomly like meet strangers, I don't know, at work or like just like around in the world, and they'll share their most, deepest things with me. And I think I like the idea of like being like there to like hold someone else's like trauma or past issues or whatever it is that people are going through. And so with my work as an actor, as a model, it was very hard in the beginning to be open about that. It's almost like that was a side of my life that I wasn't able to share and to talk about openly and publicly. But then I think the pandemic, in a good and also in a bad way, because sometimes it felt forced, but made people realize that it's really so crucial and urgent to talk about such matters. So I started getting hired from brands to speak about mental health, eating disorders, panic attacks. And they were like, because she can talk about it, she knows. And I'm like, yes, I do, because it happened to me. But it's not like I don't have a major in psychology or anything like that. But I just started just by simply sharing my experience and letting people know that there are tools out there that they can like try out. And it might not work the same way for everyone, but just like, I think giving that kind of sense of comfort, that compassion, almost like sometimes I see myself as like a mother to like people that are in my life, because we all need that kind of presence. It doesn't have to be like necessarily your biological mother, but someone that can just tell you, you know what, I got you, you're going to be fine, and it's going to be okay. And I think, again, it's so simple, but so powerful. Like, just to give you an example, a couple of years ago, this girl that I don't really know that well, she's like an influencer. We met a couple of times here in LA. But again, she's not one of my closest friends. She called me, or she found my number somehow, and she was like, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. And she like basically like told me her entire like childhood trauma, her life, her relationship with her mother. And she goes, I don't know how and why, but I feel like you can help me. And I'm like, okay, like, so I told her what I did, what worked for me. And she started going through EMDR, which is a certain kind of like a therapy that people use for traumatic experiences. And it worked really well for her. She made a whole post about it. So to me, that was like a mini mission that I accomplished, which is just like, by having lived what I lived, I was able to help someone else. So purely sharing your knowledge and your experience, either in person, on social media, on TV, on whatever platform you can, in a way that feels like very just like organic, is, I think it's so key. And there you are already an activist just by doing that. So I think it's less about the title and just more about the doing the work, and just like coming from a place of love, and just, to be there to help other people overcoming what I had to overcome myself. So
I think that's huge. Thank you, Marta. I think it's huge that for people who look at all of you and imagine you have it all figured out, and also that you had it figured out a long time ago, that you had a plan, being able to talk about this, and even for those people who are watching this now, hearing this, that as you're doing it in real time, you're affecting people, which is so powerful. I can't help but think also that there's a sense that I see sometimes in young people, and perhaps not only young people, that there needs to be a plan, and that you need to know where you're going at all times, instead of realizing that I'm imagining for most of us, as you say, this collection of experiences, and it's iterative. It's one thing happens that leads to another thing that might happen to be a fortuitous event or meeting of someone, and that changes it. And I think that sense of needing this business plan that must be finished and must be executed well is not there. And I think it can really paralyze some people. So thank you for that. Anyone else want to jump in with anything on that before I move us along?
Me? I mean, one thing I want to say also about as an advice to someone who wants to be an activist is to try to focus about some things that is meaningful to them. You know, when you start to want to fight for justice, sometimes you're touched by so many different causes, so many different things, and you feel like you want to fight with everyone. But it's being an activist this is a lot of energy, and sometimes it's hard, but you really have to focus on one or two things. I love to say it, you can't be the savior of the humanity by yourself, but only one person can't. There is a lot of different people that will handle different type of cause. It's okay to just focus on something. Sometimes, yes, you can give your point of view over things that are different of what you're fighting for, but it's very important to really focus on something in particular and something that is meaningful to you. And another thing that I also want to add is to be open to critical conversation, because when you're an activist, sometimes you really have a clear idea of how you want to see the world change. You really know it, and you have the tendency to be really close to different opinions. I was that type of person. So sometimes you're not really open to listen to different way of living, of what you promote. But it's very important actually to be open to have critical conversation. The activist I was a couple of years ago is very different from the activist I am today, because I had the opportunity to listen to other women experience that are way different from mine. And that really changed my point of view of some different topics. So we really need sometimes to really be open to have critical conversation. It's very important.
Yeah. So agree. And I'm guessing everyone on this panel agrees, and many people at home, and you've hit the nail on the head of really the sort of open discourse and being open to different points of view, certainly in the United States of America, where I'm sitting right now. So thank you for adding that. So hashtags, they play an instrumental role in mobilizing the human rights movement online. We've seen this in the hashtag Black Lives Matter, hashtag Love Wins, hashtag Time's Up, and more. But without offline action, without sort of real instrumental change, some of the hashtags and social media posts can come across as sort of performative. And I'm wondering, Jess, how Re-Inc. stays involved in genuine activism and things like donations, concrete actions, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the two examples of hashtags you gave are so incredible. And yet I think there's definitely a performative side with social media sometimes. Although a good friend who's an incredible activist reminded me that every movement needs a bit of performance, especially in sort of like these groundswell moments. So I've come to realize like there's value in that. So with Re-Inc, though, I would say that the bulk of our activism actually happens offline. So we've built our brand as a for-profit brand to create a larger social impact than any of us could do individually. So really, our revenue helps generate the social impact that we want to make. And with each collection, so we do these sort of drops, we partner with an organization that we deeply believe in, that's grassroots, usually women-led, and really focuses on an issue that we're raising within the collection. So we have partnered, I think, with almost 15 different organizations now, really focusing actually on micro communities. So one of our collections was really kind of focused on mental well-being, and we found this incredible organizer in the South Side of Chicago, a Black woman that was looking for mental health advocacy and tools, was not finding it locally within her community and decided to create this organization. And we just love organizations like that are founded by people within communities and really built for the communities that they care for. And then we've partnered with larger organizations too that take a more global approach. I think we're just over 100K in donations thus far. And, you know, we're like barely at where we want our goal to be. We see that going so much further. And then I think like donations are so important, but even that's not enough. Really helping our community take action themselves, giving them tools, getting some of the incredible information that the organizations that we work with give to us and amplifying that even more across all of our platforms and channels. So almost coming full circle to social media is a huge part of what we do, and we find to be so important. So, I mean, you know, and that just goes back, I think, to the last question and point of, I don't think there's like you are an activist or you aren't. I think every single moment of your life can be about activism. You know, like, when you get your foot in a door, are you making sure you're holding it open for people behind you? If I'm just thinking about this situation I had recently with somebody that was blind and was lost and was really scared, and I helped him find his way to a subway entrance. And, you know, I don't think, you know, I understand that not everybody would feel safe doing that, but what I saw was just a man that just really needed to make his way home. And so I think like these micro moments are actually just as important as the macro moments. And I hope that everybody listening doesn't feel like activism is something so big that you can't engage in on a day-to-day level. And that's really at Re-Inc. what we help our members do is activism starts within. It's changing your heart and your minds. It's believing in yourself as much as it is believing in each other, and just the small actions that we all can take every day.
So true. The micro moments that build up to macro moments. I also love what you said about the idea that every movement needs a bit of performance. I think that's true. I think that's why we see a lot of charismatic people who will help to start things often, or the sort of the performance that's needed to convey passion and that sort of thing. I also loved your mention of partnering. I think that it's very hard to do activism work entirely alone, and making sure that we have partners in this work, whatever it is, will be key. Laetitia, your new book, Love and Justice, tackles embracing Black beauty. How's this book going to inspire your activism and your readers?
So this book is about sharing very personal experience of what really made the person I am today. It's really me sharing my childhood experience, my teenage experience, the harassment, the violence, the assault I've been through that really made me so passionate about fighting for equality of sexes. So this is already what I'm doing on social media. When I post a picture, generally I'm putting a big caption to advocate for something or to address a special topic. And it was very important for me to move from this digital place to a more physical place. Just like it's very important, I mean, to be on social media, but like I feel like it's also important to be like in the real world. So it was a way for me to just move, but it's basically the same thing. It's me sharing images and it's me sharing my experience, but like more in details, some experience I never shared on social media. And yeah, and I really hope it will just have the same type of impact, because it's actually very important to, our words are very, very important. Sometimes we have the tendency to think that just being an activist on social media, it's not enough. You have to do more. And I agree with that. We have to do more. But we have to also remember that it's very important, because abuse and injustice only thrive in silence. And when you start to talk about some things, this is the first step for change. So it's very important to know that don't think that because you are always using your words to fight, you are not doing enough. You're doing enough.
Yeah. Such good points, really. I'm wondering with your book, was there a moment that made you decide you wanted to write this book?
It's been a while since I really want to write a book. I mean, when I start to create on social media, at the beginning, when I start with my sculpture, it wasn't to fight. It wasn't for activism. It was in the moment where I was trying to reconcile myself with my African heritage. And I remember I saw this photo album of women prior to colonization, African women, old picture in black and white, and they were wearing incredible hair sculpture too, traditional hair sculpture that African women were wearing before colonization. And I was just inspired. I was like, wow, this is just amazing. It really made me want to experiment with my own bread. And when I started to experiment, it was just for fun, just for the heart, for the beauty of the visual. And every time I was posting something, I had more comments, more shares. And eventually one day, a photo series I made went viral. And then I started receiving a lot of messages, especially for Black women, saying that the picture I was sharing helped them to feel better about their hair, to feel better about their skin, to feel better about the Blackness. And that's where I realized that I could use this to really associate it with my conviction to make a change. And when I start to now use my hair to share all my political message, I had a lot of people telling me, you can really write a beautiful book. You have a lot of stories to tell. You have a lot of beautiful heart to share. It can be a beautiful book. And I was thinking about it, but I didn't know exactly what should be my first step, what I should do to really start writing something. But I was really manifesting a lot. Like, I want to write a book, but I don't know what to do. And eventually one day I received a mail. It was a book manager just like this saying me, I love your profile. And I think there is something we really can to breathe with. And that's where everything starts.
Well, I know that there are other writers on this panel. And again, the creativity for all of this, I am absolutely certain that you not only have written a beautiful book, but you all write and create beautiful things. I find it inspiring. Okay, I'm gonna ask you all to answer this last question, and in doing so, I want to thank you for being so candid and being so open, not just on this panel, but being so in your lives and inspiring other people because of it. The courage it takes to be able to do some of this, to be disagreed with, to take stances that aren't easy all the time. But really, I can tell you, sitting where I sit, just how the work that you do and the lives that you lead inspire other people. So thank you. I wonder, I mean, this is a big question, and because you're all going to answer it, and it's sort of, you can take it into chunks, you can answer it however you would like to. It can be a Rorschach, sure. Any one of you, a Rorschach test. So the big question is, I'm going to start with Ashley. What does social justice mean to you?
Wow. Yeah, so interestingly enough, I never really thought about what it personally meant to me until it was actually posed as a question to me the other day. And so I really thought about it. And for me, I don't think my definition really matches what the online definition is. I feel that social justice is the coexistence and equal protection of everyone that shares space on this planet. And that includes both human and non-human, in a way that doesn't silence or minimize, the way any individual experiences an injustice. So for that to happen, you have to kind of remove your superiority complex and recognize that everyone deserves a fair shot at a beautiful life, no matter where you're at in society or on the food chain, even. So that goes, it applies to everyone, like not just people, but animals too. And oftentimes we leave animals out of that conversation of social justice, but they just want to live too. So I think both people and animals need to be included in social justice conversations. And it's interesting because I feel like being Black, sustainable, and vegan, it's a life of constant mental and emotional battles. It can be exhausting. Because when you speak out against racial injustice, you're angry. When you speak out against climate justice, you're preachy. When you speak up for animals, you're judgy. And so, I just want to end by saying that being an activist, it's not always going to be sexy. I mean, it really does require having the courage to take a stance for something greater. And, that's what social justice is to me. It's having that courage to make a stance or take a stance against, the injustices that are happening to everyone, and not just to you, but to everyone as a whole.
Grateful to you for that. Jess, jump in.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Ashley said. I think, I really love a lot of what's been said on this panel around creativity and the power of something that almost comes from your belly versus your mind. So like really comes from your instinct, and comes from your innate, just beautiful, imaginative creativity. And to me, social justice is actually, it's an act of building, and it's an act of building a truly imaginative new normal. And when I say truly imaginative, I mean that what has gotten us here is not what's going to build the future. And that is something that I've definitely learned, especially from activists in the Black Lives Matter movement and in racial justice and reparations movements, is like we have to be willing to step away from almost the last several hundred years. There's probably very, very old wisdom that has unfortunately been mostly lost, but we have to really, we have to be creative in our approach. And so that new normal needs to offer equitable systems, nourishment for the human spirit. And after hearing Ashley talk, I would say like nourishment for all spirits, plants and animals and everything. Like nourishment, I think, is so, so, so key, and ways to truly repair historic trauma. And so when I think about social justice, there is definitely a level of trauma. And so it's about this dream and this architecting of this future. And yet what we also have to be super, super aware of and have open dialogues and repair is all of the historical trauma that has mostly been built by white people that have colonized the world. And so I think it's just super important to be comfortable with that and just to have that conversation to then be able to move towards a more equitable future that is imaginative and creative and offers that sort of nourishment.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear building and an active building. I think that the taking that stance and being able to begin something that you may not know what it looks like at the end. Even as you talk about the architecture of this, you don't necessarily have a blueprint, but you're building along the way. Thank you, Jess. And next, I'm going to go to Marta.
To me, social justice means reminding every individual, especially minorities, that they do have the absolute ability and right to talk about what they believe in and their truth, and that they need to call out any injustice, any violence or abuse that they have lived or people around them. And most importantly, what I think is so crucial is that people should feel safe in doing so legally and emotionally as well. And I think working on that emotional freedom is just so important. And they don't teach us that in school. And I wish that there could be, therapists in schools that could be like, I wish that education could change and we could teach mental health in school, and we could teach that if we don't learn how to be humans with other humans, there's no sense, nothing makes sense. And I think that should become like, one of our priorities, and just, reminding every single person in our lives and around us that that's real and that's so important and that's essential to being a human being. It's just so important to me.
Emotional freedom, not on the curriculum yet.
Yes.
But I think that, so what I'm seeing actually slowly, that there is more of a movement towards looking at qualitative skills and emotional skills in a new time when we used to evaluate people a lot based on quantitative skills. So the work that you're doing is already, and seeding this will have an effect. And I guarantee in your lifetime you will see a change, big change in.
I'm excited for that, and I know that it's happening. So it just makes me so happy.
Hooray. Laetitia.
Yes. So for me, social justice is to let everyone the opportunity to have a space to feel safe in the world and to not be discriminated. For me, it's very important. For me, social justice is about tolerance, because without tolerance, we're not able to build this. And what I think is very unfortunate nowadays is that we have the tendency to consider tolerant a person that is the most progressist possible. Being tolerant is not being progressist or want to forget everything we learned before to build this new normal or this new standard. Every time we speak about a new normal, we are speaking about standards that everyone has to follow. There is not one way of living life. One way of thinking life and living life can make everyone happy and can make everyone safe. Actually, real tolerance is progressive people being tolerant towards some conservative way of thinking life, and conservative people being tolerant about some progressive way of thinking life. Because this is with this exchange, this critical exchange, that we will be able to move forward. And it's so unfortunate when I think about the woke culture, the cancel culture, where you can't even now express yourself. And as soon you're not extremely progressive, you're bigot. This is very crazy to me because, I'm African. I have a very different experience from Western women. So I have the tendency to approach things maybe a little differently. And I saw it on social media. Every time I approach the fight for women with the sex aspect of life instead of the gender aspect, people want to consider me as a hateful person. And I'm like, you can't say that to me. You're not even informed about what the type of women I live with are going on a daily basis in my country, literally. Because as soon as a woman is born in some area, she will be mutilated, she will be cut just because she's born like this. So I can't allow myself to ignore the fact that sex exists. This is not hate, but lately you have the tendency to feel like to move forward with the world, we just need to being the most progressive possible. But I think everyone deserves the chance to share the experience, and we need to really stop using these cancel culture things to try to shut down some people, some women. And I saw that in the media a lot of women that advocate for equality of sexes instead of gender equality, they are demonized, they are insulted, they are really portrayed as the evil person. But actually, if we are ready to calmly listen to everyone, we can find compromise. Disagree with someone isn't always hate. It's very important to know that real tolerance is really everyone tolerate everyone. Yeah.
So important. Thank you for that. Really, I feel as though many people need to listen openly to everything that you all have said today. I'm going to watch this because I feel as though moderating it, I took in your words. I want to watch it again so I can rehear the wisdom that you're all imparting. You know, Partners in Health has as part of our mission, we talk about the work that we do being an antidote to despair. And I can think of nothing that has felt more like an antidote to despair than not just listening to you all, but knowing that you're out there doing the work that you're doing in so many different areas and inspiring others to do the same. So I know you all have a lot of followers, but I can say anyone who sees this should be following all of you, buying your books, listening to your podcasts, and we're very, very grateful to you. We've gotten through a lot today, it feels like, and I will be distilling some of what you've said for a long time. Thank you for joining us very much. This feels like a very both beautifully focused on activism, but also shows to me the breadth of it. I want to thank the viewers around the world that has tuned into this really illuminating discussion. And as we close out this discussion, stay tuned, everybody, because we're going to show you a very short video about Partners in Health's mission. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Imagine a world where healthcare is not a privilege, but a human right. Where care is not conditional, but guaranteed. Where no patient is left behind. For more than 30 years, Partners in Health has made it our mission to create this world. From the bedside to the halls of power, we have spoken up when world leaders fell silent, taken a stand when others wouldn't. Delivered care once thought impossible, because healthcare can't wait, and neither can justice.